Imagine these mountains millennia ago submerged by floods, and in this beautiful biblical landscape named in the Old Testament, the shape of a ship. The book of Genesis says Noah landed here in the mountains of Ararat. So, could this really?
After 4,000 years, satellite scans on Mount Ararat finally revealed a structure matching the exact dimensions of Noah's Ark, complete with preserved wood fibers, sealed chambers, and genetic residue. This wasn't myth or metaphor. It was engineered, intentional, and built for a catastrophe far greater than the stories ever admitted. The discovery that shouldn't have been possible. The breakthrough began with a satellite imaging survey of deep ice layers on Mount Ararat, expected to reveal nothing more than geological quirks. Instead, the system returned a shape that silenced the room, a massive wood-like structure buried under ancient ice, measuring almost exactly 300 cubits, the length described in the oldest flood myths. The proportions are too exact, one researcher whispered. As analysts refined the scans, radar revealed interior walls laid out in precise grids, compartments far too intentional to be natural. Even more startling were faint signatures of preserved wood fibers, surviving only because the mountain's ice and pressure had formed a near-perfect preservation chamber. With each update, the structure drifted further from legend and closer to engineered design. Then came the coordinates. They matched references in the earliest Sumerian flood accounts, texts older than the biblical story by centuries. Long treated as metaphor, these narratives suddenly found an anchor in physical space. The convergence of size, age, layout, and location suggested a possibility scholars had never seriously entertained. The Ark might not be myth at all, but the preserved remains of a vessel built during a real civilization-shaking flood. That question shifted the mission overnight. The team moved from curiosity to crisis-level focus, realizing they were no longer searching for folklore. They were unearthing a piece of human history capable of rewriting humanity's understanding of ancient engineering, ancient climate collapse, and ancient survival. And as the first core samples arrived, the results would prove the structure wasn't just real. It was older and more advanced than anyone imagined. Excavation shows the structure is older than expected. When the first core samples arrived at the field lab, the results were staggering. The wooden beams, still showing faint cellular structure, carbon dated to between 3,500 and 2,900 BCE, precisely overlapping with known Mesopotamian megaflood events. This makes the myth younger than the wood, a researcher murmured, and everything shifted. Further excavation revealed advanced joinery, interlocking cuts, water-resistant layering, construction techniques centuries ahead of known shipbuilding. This wasn't a makeshift lifeboat. It was engineered, deliberately, skillfully, on a scale never before seen in that era. Silt packed into the lower hull confirmed submersion. The fine sediment matched flood layers found across Mesopotamia, clinging to walls like a memory, evidence of a massive vessel carried by a real, catastrophic deluge. But the most shocking detail lay in the biology. Fossilized plant and animal traces embedded in the wood match species from multiple continents. Organisms that shouldn't have coexisted in the early Bronze Age, not accidental, deliberate, collected. The age, the craft, the sediment, and the biosignatures told one story. This wasn't a lone family's ark. It was a coordinated preservation effort, not survival, continuity. And as the team descended toward the sealed lower chambers, they sensed the next layer would reveal not just how the Ark was built, but why. The hidden chambers reveal a disturbing purpose. The deeper the excavation went, the less the structure resembled any Ark described in legend. Beneath the main hull, below the wooden compartments, researchers uncovered a network of subterranean chambers, stone-lined, circular, flawlessly carved. No Bronze Age society was believed capable of such engineering. This wasn't storage, one researcher said. This was containment. Inside the chambers, DNA traces told an unsettling story. Not livestock, not local fauna, but extinct species, and genetic lineages predating domestication. At first, scientists assumed contamination, but repeated tests confirmed it. The vaults once held biological material from ecosystems far beyond Mesopotamia, not a zoo, an archive. Then came the pollen. Trapped in sealed air pockets, ancient grains came from lost wetlands and vanished forests, ecosystems destroyed during the climate collapse of 3000 BCE. Their placement wasn't accidental. Someone had gathered life from dying worlds. "This wasn't a rescue," a scientist whispered. "It was a restoration plan." The layout reinforced it. Spaced chambers, mineral linings, salt preservatives, passive ventilation, all signs of biopreservation, centuries ahead of its time. This vessel wasn't built to ride out a storm. It was built to restart after one. The Ark of Scripture spoke of survival. The Ark beneath the ice speaks of strategy. A civilization didn't just try to endure the flood. They prepared to reboot life after it. With each sample, each test, each chamber opened, the same question grew darker. What kind of flood were they expecting? And the answer would come from the rocks surrounding the vessel. Geological evidence showing the deluge was not only real, it was civilization ending. Geological evidence confirms a civilization-ending flood. When geologists drilled into the bedrock around the site, the evidence came like a confession. A thick, uniform layer of fine gray silt stretched across Mesopotamia, proof of a single, catastrophic flood. Not erosion, not seasonal swelling, a sudden, continent-scale wall of water. This wasn't weather, one geologist said. This was collapse. Thousands of kilometers away, Greenland ice cores told the other half of the story. A sharp, rapid spike in global temperatures, triggering massive glacial melt. The timing matched exactly. Sea levels didn't rise by inches, they surged by meters within decades. For early river valley civilizations, it was annihilation. In the Persian Gulf, sediment samples showed debris from distant mountain ranges, materials flung together by forces no single river could explain. The flood had gathered earth from across the continent and dropped it in one violent breath. This wasn't local, it was global. Shoreline reconstructions confirmed it. Sea levels rose 10 to 20 meters within a human lifetime. Cities vanished. Agriculture collapsed. Survivors fled inland, carrying only stories too big for history, so they became myth. And suddenly, everything aligned. The vessel entombed in ice wasn't built for a storm, it was built for extinction. The flood wasn't moral metaphor, it was a memory of planetary trauma. And the Ark wasn't salvation, it was forethought, which raised the final unspoken question. To build something so advanced, someone had to know it was coming. So, who warned them? And what else did they leave behind? The terrifying revelation of who built the Ark. As archaeologists cross-referenced the Ark's construction with known ancient cultures, one name kept resurfacing: the Uruk expansion. Around 3500 BCE, Uruk surged across Mesopotamia with technology no neighbors could rival: city grids, metallurgy, long-distance trade. Its origins had always puzzled historians. Now, staring at a vessel built with precision centuries ahead of its time, one expert whispered, "This has Uruk fingerprints all over it." The Ark's joinery, interlocking beams, water-sealed seams, aerodynamic hull, mirrored techniques found in scattered Uruk ruins, once dismissed as outliers. Re-examined now, they looked like prototypes, fragments of a much larger plan. A structure built not to weather storms, but to endure collapse. Clay tablets gave that theory weight. Among them, faded lines described a Council of Seven, chosen for their mastery of construction, astronomy, and animal stewardship. Their mission? To preserve the seed of all living things. The language matched the DNA traces found inside the vaults. Extinct species, non-native lineages, not myth, coordination. Then came the final link. Genetic residues from the Ark matched Uruk lineages thought lost to the megaflood. The builders perished, but their knowledge endured, sealed in ice. The biblical tale of a lone prophet and a divine blueprint now appeared to be a simplified echo of something grander, a civilization-scale preservation plan. The Ark wasn't faith, it was foresight, a last effort by a scientific elite to outlast a climate catastrophe. And the phrase "two of every kind"? It wasn't literal, it was genomic. Not pairs of animals, but encoded seeds, frozen DNA, a biological backup, built thousands of years before humanity knew what DNA was. the two of every kind myth explained by science. As researchers examined the biological traces sealed in the Ark's lowest chambers, the oldest part of the story began to unravel. There were no bones, no preserved animals, only DNA, microscopic residues, paired and catalogued. There were no animals here, one analyst said, only their blueprints. Each chamber contained male and female genetic signatures, archived with surgical precision. The structure wasn't a zoo, it was a vault, designed not to house life, but to store its essence. Then came the temperature data. Mineral deposits suggested the chambers once held low, stable temperatures. Some were lined with salts, natron, sodium, materials known to slow organic decay. Others used antiseptic clays and resins, designed to repel bacteria and moisture. Primitive cryopreservation, thousands of years before the concept existed.
This was no allegory. It was biopreservation.
What later cultures remembered as animals walking 2 by 2 was symbolic, an ancient retelling of genetic safeguarding, told by people who lacked the language to describe what they had inherited.
And then came the darker truth.
The Ark wasn't made to ride out a flood. It was built to restart a world after one.
A cryo vault of life, not for survival, but for rebooting, which raised the final haunting question.
If the Ark succeeded in preserving the genetic future, what happened to the civilization that built it? And why did their last hope end up entombed in ice, alone, on the mountain? The Ark's final resting position raises a dark question. When structural engineers mapped the Ark's position deep within Mount Ararat, one conclusion emerged. The vessel hadn't landed there, it had been lifted. Tectonic forces had driven the mountain upward long after the floodwaters receded, sealing the Ark into rising stone like a fossil.
This ship didn't come to rest, one expert said. It was swallowed.
Inside, the damage told the rest. Crushed corridors, splintered beams, floors warped upward. The force had come from below. A massive shift had twisted the vessel shut, trapping it in geological time. But the most disturbing signs weren't natural. Along the inner walls, engineers found burn marks, intentional fires, soot trails and ash clustered around what were once DNA vaults. This wasn't destruction by chance. Someone inside had tried to destroy parts of the Ark. Charred tools lay nearby. Whatever was done, it happened in the vessel's final moments. They sealed their own work, one archaeologist whispered, or protected it from someone else. Near a collapsed exit, skeletal remains told a final story, a desperate attempt to escape, trapped as the mountain rose. The Ark had become both vault and tomb, its mission silenced by earth and fire, which left only one question echoing across 5,000 years. What knowledge did they die trying to protect? The answer, researchers soon realized, had already been recorded, carved in tablets buried with the dead. Texts that would change everything about the Ark's true purpose. New translations of ancient tablets change everything. The final breakthrough didn't come from ice or wood. It came from language. Newly deciphered Akkadian tablets, long dismissed as fragmented myths, were retranslated using updated linguistic models. What emerged was not a religious tale, but a technical record. One line stood out immediately: a vessel for the memory of life. Not a rescue ship, not a family craft, a library built to preserve the world's biology before the flood erased it. Another tablet described flood warnings decades before the event, written in terms resembling early climate prediction rather than divine prophecy. It spoke of melting ice in the northern mountains, of waters rising without rain, matching modern reconstructions of rapid glacial collapse. The builders weren't reacting to divine command. They were responding to scientific foresight far more advanced than historians believed possible for 3000 BCE. A separate fragment outlined procedures for carrying the essence of beasts, a phrase once thought poetic but now unmistakable in context. It matched perfectly with the DNA residues found in the Ark's chambers. Samples, sequences, preserved traces representing species diversity. The myth had simplified what ancient engineers had literally attempted to do. Then came the most shocking translation. One damaged tablet referenced a second vessel that failed, suggesting the Ark we discovered was not the only attempt, merely the one that endured. This single sentence reframed millennia of storytelling. The legendary tale of Noah may be a merged memory of multiple desperate missions, filtered through trauma and retold until tragedy became survival. Together, these texts shattered the traditional narrative. The flood was anticipated, not sudden. The ark was engineered, not divinely improvised. And the people behind it were scientists, leaders, and archivists facing an extinction-level event. One translator summed it up in a whisper: "They weren't saved, they tried to save us." These revelations pointed toward a final, haunting implication. If the ancient world built arks because they predicted their own climate collapse, then the warnings embedded in their stories were never meant to comfort. They were meant to prepare. And modern researchers now had to confront the terrifying parallel. The ancient pattern was repeating. The next outline would reveal exactly how. The terrifying modern implication. When climate scientists compared ancient flood data with today's models, the resemblance was so precise it felt scripted. The same rapid warming spike that triggered the megaflood around 3000 BCE now appears in modern temperature records. One researcher whispered, "We're tracing their footsteps." And suddenly, the ark stopped feeling ancient. It felt prophetic. Sea level projections showed an alarming parallel. The ancient 10 to 20 meter rise that drowned Mesopotamian cities echoes today's worst-case scenarios for the next few centuries. The rate of ice melt in Greenland and Antarctica matches the exact pattern reconstructed from the geological layers surrounding the ark. The ancient world collapsed under a flood they saw coming, but could not stop. The modern world is accelerating toward that same threshold. Infrastructure experts analyzed the comparison and uncovered an uncomfortable truth. Our global systems, coastal megacities, power grids, food networks, are no more prepared for rapid sea level rise than early civilizations were for theirs. We have technology, satellites, engineering, but the same vulnerability. Humanity built its greatest hubs on coastlines, just as the Sumerians built theirs along rivers and fertile deltas. And like them, we have ignored warnings until water is already at the door. The flood that erased ancient cultures wasn't a supernatural punishment. It was climate physics, repeating itself across millennia. And the ark, once seen as a miracle, now appears to be the last desperate action of a society that recognized its failure too late. They tried to preserve life because they knew they couldn't preserve their world. One scientist summarized the implications with a chilling calm. The ark isn't a symbol of salvation, it's a record of collapse. And that means something terrifying. If the ancient builders faced this event and fell victim to it, then their warning, buried in myth, rediscovered in ice, may be the closest thing we have to a message across time.
The next discovery would confirm it. The ark wasn't just history.
It was a lesson, one we are dangerously close to repeating. The mystery solved, the ark was not a story, it was a warning. By the time archaeologists aligned the geological, biological, linguistic, and structural evidence, the truth became impossible to deny. The ark was real, engineered with purpose, and built in the shadow of a catastrophe its creators understood far better than we ever imagined. It wasn't a tale of divine rescue, it was a scientific intervention, a last attempt to preserve life before a civilization-ending flood rewrote the map of the ancient world. One researcher put it bluntly, "They didn't escape the disaster, they prepared for our future." The genetic samples sealed in stone chambers, the engineering far beyond its era, the climate predictions carved into clay, and the traces of a society pushing against the limits of survival, all converged on the same chilling conclusion. The ark wasn't a miracle, it was desperation, executed with precision and hope, yet ending in tragedy. Its builders weren't chosen prophets, they were the final scientists of a collapsing age, trying to safeguard the blueprint of life as the waters rose. And in the myth's transformation, from engineered vault to symbolic salvation, humanity forgot the most important part. The ancient world didn't tell this story to comfort future generations. They encoded it to warn them. The terrifying solution to the 4,000-year mystery is simple and devastating. The ark was built because they knew what was coming. It failed because they acted too late. And now, with modern oceans rising and temperatures mirroring the same lethal curve, we stand exactly where they once stood, at the edge of an avoidable catastrophe, repeating a cycle written in silt, ice, and ancient fear. The Ark wasn't their salvation, it was their message, and we are running out of time to understand it. The discovery proves the Ark wasn't a miracle, it was a warning left by a civilization facing the same climate spiral we see today. They built a vault for life because they couldn't stop the collapse. Now their message is ours to face. History isn't repeating by accident, it's repeating because we ignored it.